Let's let a few more people come in. And we are going to start in just a few minutes. So Alka's coming in. We're going to give people just another minute or so to join us, and then we'll begin. It's nice to see everybody here on a Friday.
Welcome.
Right.
See some familiar names. Nice to see everyone.
Yeah. Still have a couple more people joining. And we will start shortly. Okay. All right, we still have some people joining, but we will just begin to respect people's time. And so good morning and welcome to CoachSource's first Friday webinar for March. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I am Mary Dombrowski. I am the Senior Vice President of Client Engagement with CoachSource, leading both our current client teams as well as creating new client partner teams. For those of you not familiar with CoachSource, we are the largest pure play global executive coaching firm. We've been in business for 18 years and have over 1,200 coaches globally that we deploy for leadership transformation, typically at the director level and above, including C-suite and board. CoachSource hosts webinars such as this on the first Friday of every month. At CoachSource, we believe that inspiring leadership transforms organizations. First Friday gatherings are dedicated to empowering HR business partners and leaders of talents with insights, strategies, and expert guidance on leveraging executive coaching to drive organizational excellence. If you have any topics that you would like to see us cover, feel free to email me at mary@coachsource.com. We would love to hear from you. Our topic today is on the use of executive coaching to help ensure smooth transitions into new roles. Our presentation is going to run about 45 minutes, after which we'll open the floor for Q&A. And we also welcome you to use chat for questions you have. As we move along, we will do our best to address those in real time as well. Executive coaching for role transition is a very common use of coaching with our clients. I am joined today by Zia Best, one of our CoachSource account directors and also lead of our diversity, equity, and inclusion practice, and Dr. Colleen Bastian, one of our CoachSource executive coaches, helping leaders inside organizations achieve their greatest potential. We want to discuss different times to consider executive coaching for role transitions, sharing examples with you from our clients, and we'll talk about what makes for a successful role transition coaching engagement from the perspectives of CoachSource as the service provider, from the perspective of the organization in light of their business goals, and from the perspective of the leader being coached, which Colleen can share more about. And with that, I'm going to hand off to Zia first to discuss some common role transition use cases. So Zia, I'm going to ask you to talk about some of the reasons clients come to us for executive coaching. What are the business problems they're seeking to solve? What are some of the key words, phrases, circumstances you hear that let you know coaching for role transition may be the solution? And we pull up the PowerPoint for you right now. Let me share to move over here. Go here.
Perfect.
There you go.
Great. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
And welcome, everyone. It's really great to be here chatting about this topic of when to use executive coaching and role transitions. Some of the things that I hear as a director working directly with our clients who are managing the coaching practice or have some role in it are that they might have someone who's brand new to the industry. And so typically I hear the words that this person's new, they're coming in from someplace else. And we want to make sure that we set them up for success, which are keywords right away that organizations are using. When a person might be new to the organization, there's a multitude of things that we might hear. We might hear that we really believe in them. We believe that they're high potential. We want to make sure that they have the support resources that they need, that they're able to develop the relationships that they need to in order to drive business and be successful here. And it's really about making sure that they have the right language to speak at that particular organization, that they understand the context and environment that they're in. And so typically our partners are mentioning things like that. When a person is changing a role within an organization, typically we hear things about the fact that they are subject matter experts. They've been really, really strong in their careers, that they're valued for what they know. And now our partners are looking for them to provide new value to the organization for how they lead, how they drive the business, how they partner with others, how they develop and inspire others as well. For first-time roles, perhaps a VP that's been appointed into that position or promoted internally, we hear that these leaders really need to broaden their lens to an enterprise-wide view, right? That they may be expected to do things like build consensus and build coalitions within the organization. And when someone is new to a department, for example, it's usually all about the culture and understanding the ethos of what they already have there, being able to tap into that and being able to really understand and appreciate how that department works and bring extra value. When folks are on an internal rotation, typically they've excelled in their role already. And now it's about seeing if that recipe is successful elsewhere. How can we give them some exposure to see how they can enhance what they've already been able to do and continue to drive the business forward? And one of my favorites is when we're hearing about leaders who are part of moving into the C-suite, right? What are we hearing from those clients? Typically, we hear that they know that they have the right person to lead in the organization. What they want to do is equip that person with all the tools and resources and support and knowledge that they're going to need to be successful in the role. When folks are moving out of the C-suite to the board, we're hearing things like they want them to be forward thinking for the future, succession, legacy, culture lens. And when folks have been a part of something like a merger or acquisition, which can be very difficult, combining and maybe even deciding what elements to keep and what to not keep, that it's really about making sure that people feel valued and appreciated, that they're bringing together their best perspectives to really create something brand new that wasn't in existence before. And so those are just some of the things that I hear from our partners as they're talking about all of the different times in which it might be important to have a transition coach within the organization when they have someone completely new, when they have someone that maybe has been in the organization for a long time, but this is the first time they've elevated in role, and really making sure that they have the lens that they need, the support that they need, and they understand how to thrive in this context.
All right. Do you want to go to the, do you want to talk to the next?
Yeah, let's do that. I think
Okay.
that one really does help illustrate the next points, which are, why are they asking for this? What are they really looking to solve for? And I think that this depiction here really helps you to visualize how transition coaching can be used. So if we look at the circle on the left, we can see that it's labeled from day-to-day all the way to executive. When folks are really in that day-to-day capacity, they're exhibiting leadership skills, they're driving the business forward, and really focused on what it is that they do and what they can see. But when they expand a little bit and need to provide a little bit more leadership skills, then we still have some capabilities internally to be able to support those people, but their view has broadened. The scope has expanded in a different way. And when they are transitioning through many different levels, you want to make sure that they have what they need, not just from the day-to-day perspective, not just understanding some of the foundations and principles of leadership, but really being able to actualize and realize that and implement that in a way that does motivate and inspire others to be their best selves and drive performance in the right way. And for those executive level positions, they need a different set of tools. They need a different view of the organization. And so being able to provide coaching services to all of those leaders, no matter where they are in their role or whether they have actually transitioned or preparing for a transition, is really important, because what we hear from clients is that they need to have ready now leaders available. They need their pipeline full of talent. They want to make sure that they're enabling growth and transformation at their organizations. They want to make sure that these leaders are able to communicate really well across the organization, within their teams, but also enterprise-wide, that they have the right relationships. They understand how relationships drive the business forward, that they are producing and highly productive, engaged in what they do, and that they're happy with what they do so that they stay, that we keep that talent in-house. They're really also looking for ways that they can accelerate the transition. I believe that studies show a little bit about when you have a new leader, that if you can provide them with the right support, they can get up to speed in half the time. And so that's what organizations are truly looking to do. And then making sure that they're increasing their internal capabilities of leaders. They don't want to go on endless coaching engagements. They want their leaders to realize some of the values of this coaching experience and then be culture carriers themselves. Peer coaching, peer support, peer mentoring as well. And so we have identified just some of the critical stages of when someone might need to think about transition coaching, and they range from when someone is moving from an individual contributor to becoming a manager to leading more broadly, also moving from a manager to a director position, and of course, when they go from director to those VP senior leadership roles across the organization. And then within those senior leadership roles, there's even some unique levers that you need to be able to access as you move up through the C-suite and onto perhaps a board and advisory position as well.
Fantastic. Okay, let me stop the share so we can move into discussion. And the next question that we wanted to talk about are talk about this, Zia and Colleen, talk about what makes executive coaching for role transition different than other executive coaching engagements. So I'd like both of you to speak more to that.
So I'll get started. First of all, Mary, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to join all of you here today and my fellow Zia panel mate. We've had plenty of panels together and it's always a joy to be with you. I want everyone just for a minute to think about a time when they were transitioning from a role they had into a new role. Everyone on this call has experienced this, I'm sure. And if you think back during that time, it probably caused you a whole lot of stress. There was a whole lot of ambiguity that you had to endure. And it would be really nice to have a support system to be able to get you through that time. Think about transitions in your life. Before you all hopped on, Mary and I were talking about how I just moved in June and she's moving this week. Transitions are challenging for people. It doesn't matter what transition it is in your life. It's helpful to have someone who is skilled in transitions to support you through that process. And at Coach Source, what's wonderful is that you have so many coaches who are so skilled, who do this day in and day out. And it can really help accelerate the leader's process in, let's say, getting a new role. So there's a high sense of urgency at that time to get it right. They need to secure early wins, right? Everyone is watching them and they know it and they feel that pressure. It's overwhelming. And so if you can have a sounding board or trusted advisor to support you along the way, it can be crucial. It differs from other executive coaching engagements because of that sense of urgency, often because of that overwhelm that comes in a time of transition. And what coaching can do is really create a strategy and build some momentum for that leader that is dealing with a lot of overwhelm. Overwhelm is one of the biggest things that we hear these days. That's why so many organizations are saying we have to double down on things like well-being and stress management tools. Well, during a time of transition, you better believe that those leaders are having some derailers that they weren't having when everything was good and they were going throughout their job in a way that was easy breezy and they knew what to do. So the timing is crucial. So for those of you who are HR leaders on the call, or your job is to be paired up with someone like Zia, who can actually help you navigate this, I would say that be certain to make certain that you are thinking through the timing. All too often what I hear is that the folks might not want to pair somebody right away because they're overwhelmed. But having that trust advisor on the front end can really help support them and navigate and secure those early wins.
Yeah,
Your
that's
thought.
really great. Colleen. There's so much that I was thinking about as you were talking, going, oh my gosh, absolutely. This is exactly what happens. And I think you're spot on to hit on the difference between utilizing transition coaching and executive coaching is that urgency. It's the timing and the consideration of how you truly do help someone understand something that's new. And think about it. I loved your example. You know, we've all had the experience of transitioning at some point. I dare to say that we've all also had the experience of being new someplace, first time doing something. And think about how value it would be if you felt supported your first time trying something out. Most
It,
people, when they try something, they want to do it well. How can we enable them to do that? Executive coaching is great all throughout, but there doesn't need to be an element of newness in order for you to really gain great value from executive coaching. But during a transition, when you are new, when it is the first time, when you are trying it, when someone believes in you and has now positioned you in a way that you have to lead in a new way, the support resource of having that partner and a coach, someone who holds your hand on that journey and helps you to avoid mistakes. And like you said, Colleen, HR partners that are able to recognize this on the front end, regardless of how much work it's going to take, right? In the beginning, they have to meet all these new people. They have to get acclimated to the culture, to the organization, to their teams. Take a little time for that transition because you will be thankful that you have that trusted advisor and your coach to rely on when you really do have those challenging days as a new person in your first time.
That's fantastic. Let's use that to just pivot for a second, Zia and Colleen. Talk about what does the HR your HR partner need to do to make this engagement successful? What's the role of HR and the organization in this type of engagement?
well, I'll speak to it a little from what I see, and then I think Zia can speak to it more broadly because she's the one who is actually on the other end of those phone calls. What I see is that being proactive and figuring out who they need to identify the most, that who could really get supported, recognizing that somebody's probably going to be slated for a promotion soon, let's say. Let's make certain we have our ducks in a row so that they can hit the ground running and be able to establish a roadmap with a coach from the get-go. All too often, what I see is that somebody comes to me and they've already gone through those first few months of the role. And there's so much missed. There's so much opportunity missed. That's why I get back to the sense of urgency of partnering with someone on the front end. So the HR leader can be really proactive, even if they think that they might have some folks, they can contact Coach Source, they can contact Zia and others who have her position and say, listen, I think I might have something going on here. Let me talk to you about it so that when it does happen, we're ready to roll. And Coach Source can operate really quickly in that way. But I think that, all too often, again, it's a trap if you wait too long. You might be able to speak to more of it because you're regularly having those conversations.
Yeah, yet again, Colleen, maybe because we've done this so many times, I feel like you're taking the thoughts right out of my head and then positioning them so well for me to just come in and back clean up. So thank you for that, which is that you're right, that it's about the timeliness of that request, right? And so our partners who I've noticed do really well with transition coaching engagements are the ones who are able to identify that there is a need for this coaching almost immediately before the plane is taken off too far down the runway. Right. And so being able to do that allows people to be proactive about the intentionality that they're going to need in order to really set themselves up for success and to bring people along with them who believe in them and who support what they're doing. And so being able to identify that on the front end is extremely helpful. But it also takes an organization to have a pretty robust understanding of their talent pipeline, right? To also really be strong partners with us so that they reach out when we need to pull the trigger because someone is transitioning, being able to step in, and they need to have an overall strategy. of what are we doing with this talent? What's our goal? What do we want people to get out of this experience? What do we want them to understand about who we are as an organization that they can feel through the way that we support them? And so the timeliness is very important. Oftentimes it doesn't happen at the very beginning. And what I hear from our partners are such and such has been in the role for 6 months, right? And they're struggling, but they're high potential. We believe in them. We think they can do it, but we don't quite understand what's happening. They have a lot of experience. They're subject matter expert. They led this function at another environment. So we know that it's there, but it's not translating. That's usually a big red flag for me that says something was happening to where this person was getting onboarded, transitioned, and they didn't get everything that they needed.
It came, I didn't mean to, did you have something else you wanted to
Go
say?
for it.
Well, I think what I might, oh, sorry, I think what I might add is, to Zia's point, we're talking about the early, so where the HR representative can really help early on. But I think what Zia's doing nicely is segueing into during the engagement, what needs to occur. And the HR business partner or whoever that person might be within the organization can help and partner with the coach and the leader throughout the process. So what Coach Source typically does is have regular syncs where we have the boss, the leader, the coach, and HR oftentimes included in that process so that they can support them. Oftentimes they might not recognize the vulnerability that the leader is having. Let's say this person's getting into C-suite and they're thinking, oh, they have it, they don't have imposter syndrome. That's not necessarily true, right? There's a lot of vulnerability that goes behind. That's why I had everybody think about the time when you went through a transition yourself. What did it cause? It caused vulnerability, right? Whether you wanted to admit it or not, it internally did cause that. And so if the HR person is aware of kind of what's going on for the leader, they can help the leader internally and partner with the coach who's helping them externally. So it could be a really wonderful collaborative effort amongst the team.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to add is that at the executive forum that we did in December, one of the points that came out was it was just a matter of course that when somebody new came into the organization, they were getting a coach for a prescribed period of time to help through with that transition. And further, somebody had put in the comments that there are some times where people inside organizations decide to bring in their own coach. But what I want to add to that is that further they said it's very important for the coach to be aligned with the company culture, because when somebody is new to an organization, especially, that you need to have that fit, that culture fit, so that everybody's on the same page about where we're trying to go and what we're trying to impart.
Yeah, you're spot on with that, Mary. That is the absolute meaning of this, right? Is that we want to make sure that we are connecting you with coaches who truly understand your organization and what's important to you and what your culture and the environment is, so that they can really truly be great resources to the leaders that they are coaching through these transitions. And the way that our HR partners can share that information with us and be open with us as their partners, the more we know, the more we can help you, the more we can prepare our coaches for and position them and make them aware of, the more we can make sure that we've got the right people to serve your leaders and that your leaders are getting the right insights. And then also that we're using that feedback loop to provide you with a lens and a view of what are the themes that we're identifying here? What does the organization need to know about what happens when we are helping through transition coaching for these leaders? How can they now take that understanding and broaden it so that they're better prepared for the next transitions, for the next leaders?
Well, Zia, that just teed up perfectly for my next question, which Colleen, I wanted you to speak specifically to what you hear and observe when you're coaching an executive in a role transition that HR and the organizational leadership needs to know. And specifically, if a company isn't using executive coaching in this transition, what are some of the risk factors in keeping the leader or helping that leader be successful in their role? And, you know, we always maintain confidentiality, of course, with our clients and the roles. But if there's some real life examples, I think that's always helpful to just drive it.
Sure. Yeah. So I spoke to overwhelm earlier, but I'll give a real life example of it. So I have a leader who just got promoted to the C-suite last month, and we were working together specifically to get him there. However, as often happens with overwhelm and in transition, people forget to take care of themselves, and they get right into the job and everything that there is to do with the actual role, and they sort of let their healthy habits go wayside. So this particular leader, I just met with him and he's like, Colleen, I've gained 10 pounds. We have to do something with this. So it's like, okay, let's get back to the basics and let's get back to what helped you be successful to get to where you are, and get him back on the right track. So sometimes that is just getting into the healthy habits that work for that individual, right? So in times of overwhelm, what works for you to maintain your stress so that you are showing up to the organization the best version of yourself, right? That you are able to really enter in that C-suite and be able to add value in a way that they are expecting you to do so. So overwhelm, figuring out what helps the individuals get beyond their overwhelm and get back into the driver's seat and back to producing. So that's something that I hear a lot. That's one specific example of it, but make no mistake about it, when people get their promotion or their new role or whatever it is, they are feeling a lot of overwhelm behind the scenes, and they probably aren't showcasing that outwardly. Another thing that I see within that overwhelm is feeling of not knowing where to start, right? So they get this new role, and so many people are like, let's do these one-on-ones and let's meet. And they might have had a roadmap to work through the first 30, 60, 90-day plan, that people do. They might have had this roadmap, but they're getting pulled in different directions and they're trying to impress people. And so somebody's saying, I really need you to help with this over here, but then their role is specifically here. So being really clear about what it is that they are intended to do for the role, and making certain that they're staying within those boundaries and that they're being really clear about that to others. Another thing that I notice is a lot of lack of confidence. So I'm working with a leader right now who is also dealing with a whole lot of imposter syndrome. And, oftentimes it's like, well, why did they pick me? I'm maybe not the right person, or I don't really know how to show up to this meeting and add value because I have no idea what they're talking about in this meeting. So that's, again, what gets back to the sense of urgency, because early on, you can be really curious. You could be asking a whole lot of questions that are going to be able to inform what you need to be doing. If you go 3 months in and you start asking all these questions, oftentimes it's like, well, why are you asking this now? Like you really need to get started soon. So I have a leader who I love this story. She actually printed off a picture of Curious George, her nephew, who is dressed up as Curious George. It is reminding her to be curious, right? Reminding her to be curious in all of her interactions, because she can learn something early on that's going to really help her be successful in the job and be successful for the organization. Another one that experience that I'm dealing with is somebody who was on maternity leave and got promoted while on maternity leave. So if you can imagine what a transition she's having on the home front, right? With a new baby, and then coming back in is always a transition anyway. And then you throw a promotion on top of that. And what often happens is, if you're coming back from a time when you haven't worked for a bit, you're trying to make certain that all those loose ends that you had with a previous role are taken care of. So what I see people doing is that they're focusing on the old role still and focusing on the new role. And it's like, you have to really get focused, make certain that they're set up for success, and delegate, put people in place for that, and then be able to move forward in the new role so that you're really focused on what needs to happen there. So those are just a few examples of some leaders that I've been working with. that are dealing with different things such as, lack of confidence, and overwhelm and feeling not where to start. And coaching can really support them with that. One thing I'll add that I didn't mention is feelings of frustration with navigating new relationships. So one of the leaders that I'm working with, had a great relationship with the boss and knew all the stakeholders and knew how to navigate those relationships. And this is new territory and new people. And if you can establish some kind of regular cadence of meeting about the working relationship, not just the tasks that are needed. So Mary, if you and I are working together and we're just meeting about, okay, what is it that's on your agenda and what is it that's on my agenda? And how can we work through that one-on-one to get through that? Then I see that as a miss. Because if we can recognize that we're two humans at work together, and how can I get the best out of you? And how can you get the best out of me? And what are some expectations that we have of each other? What are maybe some shared values? What are some boundaries? If you can have some of these conversations early on, it will really help navigate as you go forward. Because oftentimes people say, oh, I just had this interaction with the boss that I was blindsided by, I didn't see coming. But if you can really talk about how to get the best out of each other early on and have some kind of regular cadence on that for check-ins, that can really help, whether it's the boss, stakeholders, other C-suite members, board members, what have you. But recognizing that we're humans at work. Jeff Nally's book is a great resource for that too. Yeah.
That's great. So, and Colleen, talk about this from a retention issue. Like, Colleen, what happens if there isn't a coach in place? Or Zia, have we had talk about instances we've had where the companies were realizing an issue with retention and understood that this was a factor in correcting that, because we know that's such a big issue right now in the workplace.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I actually have a really good example of that. I have an example where an organization had promoted someone to a leadership role who had been in the organization forever. She was homegrown, had really her first job was in the organization, and she had been there for a really long time and had a lot of cemented relationships already in place. The challenge was that the company didn't truly appreciate that there were perceptions that had formed over time about who this leader was that were based on the roles that she was previously in and not connected with the role that she was elevated to. And so some of the challenges that she had on that team were retention issues of staff, because she didn't truly have the ability to work across the organization with the positive relationships in the way that everyone thought that she did. She's in the organization. She doesn't need a transition coach. She's been here forever, or what we might hear, right? And what could happen is a misdiagnosis or a missed opportunity of what that leader needs that's now affecting the team and the people that are there. And so oftentimes we are really trying to help our partners see the opportunity and clear out all the gunk that's on top of what the leader is experiencing, right? That overwhelm might be really deep in there, but what they're seeing is a lack of productivity. What they're seeing is a lack of engagement, and they think the person is invested. And so just taking that time to truly diagnose the right issue really does help make sure that you're providing the right solution. And so that's just one example of when an organization could miss that, and it could have a downstream effect on the organization. We also hear that when people are brand new. Brand new people have a lot of pressure on them, especially if the organization has been going through a lot of change. And now that person has to take that all in, make sense of what they've now got to manage, and put the right people in the right places, support them as well. And lots of mistakes can happen there. And so making sure that you provide that person with that coach so that they have the right lens, so they take the right time to step back to see it all before they make decisions and moves that might be difficult to undo down the line, that they're really getting set up for success is another area. Because without that, then you have a team that's not cohesive anymore, a team that's not aligned with the organization and the vision for the organization. And that's where some of those challenges come in. And so it just made me think of that when Colleen was talking, that people have to change perspectives when there is a transition. And sometimes there might be a need for coaching to allow that leader to tap into what do they need to do to change the perspective of who people think they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And get people to understand who they are today and how they can contribute and add value today.
That's a great example, Zia, of who they are today, because oftentimes you work with a leader who's grown up in the organization, and everybody still thinks of that leader like they just graduated from college, and showed up. They have them in the box, right? So if you work with a coach can help you get out of that box by partnering with your boss, HR, all the stakeholders, as you work to shift and gain that executive presence that's needed for that role. You can actually showcase what you're up to and have people see the change occur. Because if people don't see the change occur, then you and the coach are working in a vacuum. And guess what? It's one of those things that, perception is reality. So you have to make certain that you use a method like what Coach Source does do, which is involving stakeholders to change that perception. Another example of that is a leader that I'm working with who was seen as just a really tough leader and unapproachable, and people kept her in that box. And so we worked with the stakeholders to showcase what she was doing and how she had worked on herself. And some people can see that earlier, and some people it takes longer because you have to rebuild trust. So there's a lot of things that the coach can do to support the leader and the organization at large to be able to work more effectively together.
Beautiful. I wanted to just ask if you can speak to how is the coaching for role transition different at the C-suite versus the leaders that are not yet at the C-suite?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I see mostly with C-suite transition coaching is that the person who's been elevated, they believe in that person. And now they want to realize that they want the rest of the company to see why that is. And so that person is really kind of being asked to be a culture carrier in a different way than some of the other leaders, right? Really, truly setting the tone because they have such broad reach and span with what it is that they do and who they can impact. And that they're really able to be, visionary and bring people along with that vision, right? Being able to have great followership coming behind that. And so that's a little bit different because the lens, it's so interesting. My husband is a fire chief. And so I have a lot of fire analogies. So please bear with me on this one, which is I liken it to the ladder. Right. And with each level, title, position being on a different rung, C-suite being the highest, right? And the board being the highest, that as you climb higher, you can see further, you can see more, which means that you can anticipate more. You can plan more, project more, you can build more, understand more. And the higher you continue to climb, your view is pretty vast when you're at the top. You're seeing things, you're able to turn 360 things behind you, things in front of you, what's on the side of you. And that's very different than every other leader who might be looking through something that looks more like this, as opposed to having the freedom to see it all at once.
Wow, I love that analogy. I'm stealing it, Zia. Thank you very much.
It's yours.
Thank you. So I think that this is exactly what we're talking about. If you think about, okay, a marketing leader that I was working with, okay, she had been presenting to the C-suite. She knew how to influence the C-suite and coming from the lens of marketing. Okay, fast forward, now she's a part of the C-suite and she has to broaden her thinking with much more of a systems-wide perspective, right? She has to be much more visionary than she had to within that silo of marketing. So what I see often is people are used to interacting with the C-suite by the time that they get there, but they're coming in from one perspective of influencing all of them. Now that they have to think about this in terms of much more broadly in their thinking, it's going to be, how do we help the organization thrive? How do we help the culture, the vision? How do I navigate relationships that I didn't have to navigate before? It might be, investors, other board members, other C-suite members that maybe were looking at you with just that, again, marketing lens. And now you're showing up with, ooh, imposter syndrome, I'm the marketer, what could I possibly add value to on the other stuff? So we see that a lot. So I would say that it's a much broader perspective. And a lot of times people climb the ladder because they were really good at their job, right? The individual contributor that was really good as a technical expert, that then becomes the people leader, and they have to make that shift, right? And that is a very tough shift, and coaching is fantastic for that transition. And as they keep moving up, they have to get more, they have to broaden their thinking, like Zia is saying, you know, on the how far you climb, and that's the way you have to show up in your thinking, which is really training the brain to think differently. And that could be hard for folks. So having a trusted advisor to think through that, somebody who has worked a lot at the C-suite level, like a lot of the coaches here have, can really be helpful.
Fantastic. That's great. We're about to open up to questions. We already have some in chat, but before I do that, I wanted to just ask you, Zia or Colleen, if there's anything further that either of you wanted to add.
Yeah, I'd say just, kind of summing up this portion of the webinar would be, our partners that truly trust us and are open to our expertise and being able to help you identify the right triggers for coaching really do get a lot of value out of that. The partnership, the way that we involve people in transition coaching, and the way that we envelop ourselves into your business so that we can truly understand who you are now, where you want to go, who you want to be tomorrow, really does help us to create and build offerings that are really responsive to who you are and what you want to do and what you want to be different about your organization and yourself. And so the partnership is key with us, and allowing us the ability to push you a little bit and probe you and ask you powerful questions so that we're really making sure that we're providing the right solution and solving the right business problem for you. Is really, really valuable work. And so I just enjoy all the partnerships that I have with clients, because it really does help me to sit in their shoes, no matter where they are, just for a little while, to get a little bit of what they're dealing with, which helps us to build great solutions and connect them with awesome coaches.
Wonderful. Anything else, Colleen?
I would just say, just to add to that, is that, it can't hurt just to have the calls, because sometimes it's, oh, coaching's not the right thing, right? Like, your coach source, partner that you work with will be able to help you navigate whatever it is that is needed, or helping you sort through who would be the best candidates, all of that type of thing. So I think just having a really good, honest, transparent conversation with a thought partner who deals with this all the time is really helpful. And again, there's so many different coaches within the network that all specialize in different things. And many of us do a lot of work in this transitioning space, and that can really support them.
Fantastic. Thank you. And again, you are teeing this up. I'm going to just share this over to here. There we go. There we go. So we're going to move to Q&A in a moment, but I want to say, if you would like to discuss executive coaching for role transition or for any other use inside your organization, if you're a current client, feel free to reach out to your account director. We are happy to have even brainstorming calls with you, or you can reach out to me if you don't have an account director with us yet, Mary@coachsource.com. We will be releasing a recording of today's webinar after the session. And please save the date for our next First Friday, which will be Friday, April 5th. And again, if you have any specific topics that you would like us to cover, feel free to reach out to me. We welcome your feedback on that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Zia and Colleen for the Q&A. So we had a couple questions come in. The first question that came in was about people coming up, coaching for people that are coming up to retirement. This is something that we're hearing a little bit more about, but do you find that companies are willing to support that through coaching?
Absolutely. I think we're finding this all the time. Somebody who's just been an amazing contributor to that organization, they want to make certain they're set up for success. And there's a lot of us that specialize in that kind of thing as coaches, that can help them think through their North Star. What is their vision? What do they really want for themselves in their life in this next step? What is their definition of success moving forward? How can they be thinking about this next phase of their life in a different way? And so we do see organizations that come to CoachSource for that. Zia, you could probably speak to more of that.
Yeah, I actually have a client right now that is doing that for a very valued longtime employee and contributor to that organization. They're in the Midwest, so really nice culture there. And they wanted to make sure that they really, learned as much as they could from her before she left, and B, that they felt good about how that they were sending her off, because they truly did appreciate and value all of her contributions over many years. And so I think that that's a trend that's probably going to increase as more people think about the fullness of who we are as individuals and what we might need, and to be supported. And as organizations think about kind of how they continue to show who they are through the experience of how they treat their most valued long-term leaders, that others are looking at it. They want to know that it means something to be as loyal and as committed as some others can, and it can have a really inspirational and motivational effect for others seeing that an organization finds that important.
I think that's a really great point, Zia, that other employees are watching how you are treating other employees. And that's important. If anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hand. I'm just going to go through some of the questions that are in chat, but raise your hand if you have something that you'd like our panel to address. Julia has asked, are there any assessments that we use or recommend to get a sense of the areas where a leader may be struggling or anticipate to be struggling? We, of course, are assessment agnostic and work with many different ones, but Colleen and Zia, you want to speak to that?
Well, it would be specific to what the struggles are. I mean, there's lots of different assessments that we use for different reasons. If you think about a Hogan, for instance, can be really helpful when somebody is going through a time of stress, because we know the derailers are going to show up, right? We know those risk factors are going to be there. And so for a coach to help hold up the mirror and say, hey, you're kind of doing that thing where you're pulling away from everybody because you're so stressed and you're not really getting out there and talking to people and being resourceful. And by the way, it's right here, and you reported that. So I'm saying that in kind of a way that is maybe less sensitive. My purpose in sharing that is it can help them really look at, okay, how am I evaluating myself? Because I know how I really derail. And in times of stress, oh yeah, here it is again. Okay, so let me put things in place to be able to not pull away, to be able to, be resourceful and set up regular meetings so that I can hear the information that I really need to hear. So that would be one. Maybe another one, DISC or something like that, if you're thinking from a style perspective of, oh, I'm that, C analytical type, and how do I possibly connect with a lot of the D's or the I's or the S's, right? So from a style perspective, but there's so many different ones that we use, and we use them for different reasons. But a lot of times the CoachSource engagement will be set up with an ability to use an assessment along with stakeholder interviews, and combining those two efforts can really be helpful to be able to figure out where do we really need to focus our efforts here as you go through this transition.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's actually a new assessment that I just got certified in that is really kind of like fascinating me right now, which is a standout assessment through the Marcus Buckingham Company, which is all about identifying your strengths, but strengths defined in a new way, right? Based on how you feel you are at your best, which can be pivotal to determining where a leader might need to go based off of how they're showing up, what they are. For example, I think their 9 roles, they range from things like advisor, provider. A provider thinks about, is everyone okay? Right? As the first thing. If you know that a person is a provider because you've had that assessment, then their challenges may be different because they see things differently. They show up differently. So any assessment that really gives you the ability to see who the person is and what do they tend to lead with really can help you to get a sense of where you might need to go with this leader and how to unearth some of those challenges that they might be holding on to.
Another great one that I use fairly frequently is the leadership circle profile as well too, because you can really think through how to get into that creative space and out of the reactive space. And you can get a whole host of folks to be able to fill out the survey on you, and you can self-report as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So another question came in about whether there are any first 90 or 100-day tools, frameworks that are recommended.
I mean, I love the classic First 90-Day book. It is fantastic. I often tell leaders, go dust it off. You have it. They often have it. Go dust it off, bring it back again, create the plan. We co-create it together, but they always find something new when they go back in there, right? It might be an area or chapter that they didn't really pay as much attention to at their last promotion, but now they're coming back to it and saying, oh yeah, I really need to double down on this. And it can be great for as an interview tool too, by the way. Before you even get the interview, what are you going to do when you actually get there, right? If you already have that figured out and you bring that into the interview, that's fantastic. I helped a leader with that just last week. So show up with your plan of action.
Yeah. That's a really great one. I'm actually going to type in the name of an author in the chat, Naveed Naziman, who has some books on mastering executive transitions. He's a PCC coach and does a lot of research and writing in this regard of, how do you avoid the mistakes that you might possibly see when you're transitioning. It's really been a really helpful guide. And I hear that some of our clients really do like it. And so we're even exploring ways that we can build that in to a part of our transition coaching offering. I think it's relatively inexpensive, but I know that it's been really impactful. And I keep hearing that this book is really transformational. Oh, great. And Terry Frangie says that it's Naveed is great. So that's a good thing to know. He seems great.
A good reinforcement there. Yeah, one of the challenges they say with somebody coming in new is wanting to make too much of an impact too quickly, not listening, looking to make sweeping changes before you understand, alienating people. That's one of the big risk factors.
Yeah.
We hit on that earlier, that it's about people's perspectives, right? And people's perspectives can feel like this is quite rushed. You haven't even sat down and taken your shoes off, and now all these changes are happening. And so it's not just what you do, but it's also the appearance of what you do and how quickly you do it so that you can avoid alienating people. What might you need to build in to be considerate of what's already in place and to, again, bring people along with you with the change and not leave them behind, wondering what's happening and why they're not a part of it.
Yeah. Channeling your inner Curious George, never a bad thing. Just staying curious in life in general. So many people come in with so many assumptions. Oh, I don't want to work for that boss because they're such a jerk or whatever it is, right? And do you really know that? How can you really understand someone and just be curious and let those assumptions go to the wayside? There's so much value in that in transitions and in life.
Fantastic. Well, I don't see any other questions. Last call, if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask either Zia or Colleen a question. If not, we will see you again April 5th for our next First Friday. And we wish you a very, very happy weekend. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.